I am ranked number one. One! That means I'm the best.
Well, inevitably Frank Warren has had his say, but he raises a point. In fact, he raises a point or two. Frank Warren has dismissed nonsense claims from Eddie Hearn that Ruiz could be stripped of his heavyweight titles if he refuses to fight AJ in Saudi Arabia. Ruiz says he has no intention of going to the Middle East, and he's insisting that the fight will be staged in the United States again. Ruiz has announced recently that he's not going to Saudi Arabia. Now, on a Twitter video, he said he has no protection out there. Now, I was wondering what he was talking about at first. I was thinking in terms of judging, refereeing, or maybe he thinks AJ is going to get some juicing exemptions or something like that. I don't know. I thought he meant protection pertaining to the fight. But I think he's talking about his well-being and safety in the country, because everybody's making a big deal about the human rights issue in there and whatever political situation. But like I said, people outside Saudi Arabia trade with businessmen in there every day, and nobody has nothing to say. But when AJ's fighting, all of a sudden you want to make it an issue. And even when Amir Khan was fighting there, they made it an issue. But when Groves and Cannon Smith, who probably ain't as famous as AJ and Khan, all these people, and I'm not saying people don't talk about Saudi Arabia issues every day. There are people tackling it. That's something real to them. But most of the boxing fans talking about human rights in Saudi Arabia, they weren't bringing this up before. Had nothing to say about Cannon Smith and Grubbs. Nothing at all. When certain pop stars or musicians go over there, nothing to say. Strange. But Frank Warren has said Ruiz has every right to refuse to travel to Saudi Arabia, as the US government has advised American citizens not to travel there. Now, I didn't know about this. But it looks like Frank has gone all CNN and done his research as he would with Eddie being involved in it. He says the bottom line, in the US, the State Department advises its citizens not to go to Saudi Arabia for many reasons. The killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, human rights issues. They've got a long paragraph on torture and cruel, inhumane treatment, women's rights, and it talks about the risk of going to airports where terrorists may attack. That's all on their official website. His own government is telling him his life could be in danger. All this nonsense about having his titles taken away from him, that is nonsense. He said Ruiz can be sued for breach of contract, and he may have a point there. But it's not an easy case, that's for sure. He has a very, very strong position for not traveling. When announcing the fight at a press conference in the Middle East, conspicuously without either fighter there, Hearn said he had hoped the rematch in Saudi Arabia, being dubbed the Clash on the Dunes, would help change boxing forever. He cited Muhammad Ali's fights against George Foreman, the Rumble in the Jungle, and Joe Frazier, the Thriller in Manila, which helped grow the heavyweight division's popularity across the world. But Warren is not fooled. Frank knows that Eddie is all in it for the money, and I know that too, and I agree with Frank on that. It's all about the money, of course it is. As soon as the Saudis opened up that checkbook, Eddie was in. You know, it's kind of like the Logan Paul and KSI fight. He said he cringed watching them fight, and you know they're not pro level, and now apparently he's going to promote the fight, the rematch. It's all about money. Frank said you won't be taking your wives or girlfriends because we know what the situation is there. There's no drinking there, which Frank accepts because it's their religious beliefs, but it's hardly the usual environment for a boxing match, or indeed many sporting events. Well, I'll tell you what, Frank, it's better to have no alcohol there than the fighting that you had in the crowds when Tyson Fury was fighting Sefri. Even Tyson Fury was distracted by it. And I'm sure most of them fighting were fueled up on alcohol. Frank said he found it very odd to announce a fight with either of the boxers there, and Ruiz has been quite vociferous about saying he has no intention of going there. Listen, it was very strange announcing the fight without no boxers there. It was. Frank says Eddie has a point that he's got a contract with him, but he has a real problem in saying he'll be stripped of his titles. He said it's not up to Eddie, it's up to the governing bodies. They own the titles. Now, that's true. That is true. I can't remember Eddie saying he's going to get stripped of his titles. He said he could be sidelined and not able to fight for a long while. And the lawsuit could end up costing Andy a lot of money. I remember that being said. The thing is, though, Andy said he's not going to fight in the Middle East. And with what Frank said there, if he's correct about the US government taking that position about American citizens traveling to Saudi Arabia, okay, he's got a point there. He's got a point. But he also said he's not going to travel to the United Kingdom because of how the British Boxing Board of Control and UKAD handled the situation between Dillian Whyte and Rivas, where Dillian tested positive apparently in his A sample. We're still waiting for the result of the B sample, but was still cleared to fight. By the way, Dillian was cleared by VADA A and B sample. You know, let's not forget that. What does Frank say about Ruiz not wanting to travel to the UK because of that? Frank was the main man backing Tyson Fury, supporting Tyson Fury, while UKAD and the anti-doping panel were going back and forth on how to settle the case. UKAD banned Tyson Fury, the doping panel withdrew the ban, and Frank Warren knew that Tyson had popped for something. He was co-promoting Tyson Fury with Mick Hennessy when he took the 3 titles from Vladimir Klitschko. And Klitschko didn't know that Tyson had popped for something months earlier when UKAD found him and Fury with trace amounts of nandrolone in their systems. We didn't know the results when Fury was tested for nandrolone until 2016. So when Frank Warren is screaming it's a travesty that Rivas wasn't informed, neither was Klitschko, and that was under your watch. So stop being a hypocrite, Frank. Stop being a hypocrite. As for Andy Ruiz, I really hope that they tax that pocket in the lawsuit if they're able to. But, you know, I'm going to take Frank's word. I don't think Eddie or AJ will get total satisfaction in the lawsuit. I don't think they will. And the reason I believe that is Heyman ain't a stupid man. He's not going to make Ruiz go through this litigation and they're stripping the flesh off his back. They obviously know there's limits on what the court or what the judicial system can do. And there's probably some loopholes that they're looking to exploit. And it doesn't matter how ironclad your contract is. Like people say, oh, it wasn't ironclad enough. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes there's room for a compromise or for a loophole to be exploited. It is what it is. And when people say ironclad, you can't draft some draconian contract that belongs in the 15th century because nobody's going to sign it. But we're talking about what glues boxing together. And that is rival promoters and other parties cooperating at times to give the boxing fan a good service. And you would hope, after giving Ruiz a title shot and life-changing money, that the rematch negotiation would be a smooth transition and that they wouldn't throw all types of roadblocks in the way. Because that's how you keep a working relationship with people who you're not necessarily partners with. They're your rivals. But there are codes of conduct between businessmen, or you'll never get business done. Boxing has survived on that for years. If Eddie had thought that it was going to come to this with the rematch clause, Ruiz would have never got the shot. And I doubt if he's in a similar position that a PBC fighter is going to get the voluntary. I doubt it very much. But the PBC, they're going rogue. That's what they're doing here. Ruiz has no grounds, from what I'm understanding, to say that the fight is going to take place in America. He forfeited that when he signed the first contract. He wouldn't have to worry about his safety in Saudi Arabia if he agreed to fight in England in the first place. Why is he more vulnerable in Saudi Arabia than AJ anyway? Or Joseph Parker or Derek Chisora if they fight on the card? Why is he more vulnerable than Chris Eubank or Groves or Cannon Smith or Amir Khan, who have all fought in Saudi Arabia recently? Why is he more vulnerable? So while Frank theoretically has a point, it's all some bullshit about he's worried about his safety. He ain't paid $9 million for God's sakes. It's stalling tactics. Just like he won't fight in Britain, just like he won't fight in Saudi Arabia, he has an excuse or a reason for everything. They're trying to play a long game here. And perhaps try and fragment the titles and keep some kind of status for Andy. And maybe open up a few opportunities for some other PBC heavyweights. With the fragmented sanctioning bodies, probably not the WBO. Cause a little chaos and try and pick some of the pockets of the Caucasus amongst the chaos. That's the Al Heyman way. Eddie might have Ruiz on the wrong side of a binding contract, but it's not ideal for Eddie for this to go into the court system. It really isn't. And the fact that Heyman and Ruiz are not saying, okay, Eddie, we don't want to go to court, we don't want no trouble like that, tells you there's a long game potentially being prepared by Al Heyman to play right now. Well, I remember Frank said that Eddie was a bad character, paraphrasing for using StubHub in the secondary market. Frank was trying to say he's fleecing the punters, yeah? And then he used it himself. We'll see if Frank gets a franchise player on his roster and the Saudis open up the checkbook, what he'll do when he does take the check and goes over to Saudi Arabia.